21 movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now let's fucking rank this shit. What's going on, everybody? Well, we have the release of Captain Marvel this weekend, so now we have 21 Marvel Cinematic Universe films. That is a huge franchise. A couple more, it's gonna pass Bond, and then, unless I'm mistaken, that might be the longest running movie franchise of all time, and it ain't slowing down anytime soon. So we're gonna do a new updated ranking. I've done a couple of these. It's changed a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. I've kept basically the same ranking the past couple times I've done it, just added in the new movie, but there has been some shifting of some numbers here, and some movies that I've rewatched, some movies that have been better than I remember, some movies that aren't as good as I remember. So this will be a brand new ranking with the inclusion of Captain Marvel, but no more nonsense, let's just get right down into the nitty gritty. Number 21 is still Iron Man 2 for me. Now, before I even get into this list, I should have said a little pretext here. I don't think Marvel has done a bad movie yet as far as the Marvel Cinematic Universe film. So even number 21, I still consider it a good enough movie. It's still good, still watchable. They have yet to have a real stinker on their hands. So being number 21 is still not a huge deal. Iron Man 2, however, the problems that I have with it, I mean, the good things, yes, you still have Robert Downey Jr., you still have some of the cool stuff as far as the Iron Man technology. I think that Whiplash is a really cool villain for the first half. There's some good stuff in there. It's an entertaining movie. Where the negatives come in for me, and why it's my least favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe film still, is because it feels like so many different movies just kind of jumbled into one. It feels like an Iron Man sequel where Iron Man is trying to figure out like his own inner demons, and then you have this Whiplash storyline coming in, and then you have this Justin Hammer storyline coming in, and then you have Nick Fury coming in, and overall the biggest storyline that overshadows the entire movie is the Nick Fury trying to set up this Avengers thing, so the entire movie feels like a commercial for the Avengers. It annoyed the piss out of me back when it came out in the late 2000s. It annoys the piss out of me when I watch it now. But now that we're 21 movies in, the blow is just kind of lightened a little bit. So Iron Man 2, still a fun movie, but that's my number 21. Number 20 is Thor: The Dark World. Now again, I still think this movie is good enough. I think that the Thor: The Dark World, when I first saw it, I like the world building. I like a lot of the stuff on Asgard. Just like the other movie that in the franchise Thor, whenever I get to that, the biggest negative for this movie is the Earth stuff and the Earth characters. I don't like any of them. I don't even really care for Natalie Portman. I love her as an actress, but she just doesn't have the chemistry with Chris Hemsworth. And I think that's why when you get to Thor Ragnarok, they just kind of abandoned that altogether because I just figured it's not working. So all the Earth stuff is what holds this down, as well as probably one of the most forgettable and useless villains in this entire cinematic universe with Malekith. I don't remember shit about Malekith except for what he looks like. So there you go, number 20. Number 19, this is gonna piss some people off. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This is a movie that I have rewatched since doing my last ranking, and it remains where it's at. I really enjoy the first Guardians of the Galaxy. You will see that high up on this list. When you get to the sequel, the movie really feels like James Gunn got all of the tethers taken off of him and he got to make whatever movie he wanted. And God bless James Gunn, but when you let James Gunn just go off and do whatever he wants, he goes really dark, really crazy, and it doesn't quite fit for me. When I watch this movie, a lot of the really cruel aspects of it, as far as the conclusion of the storyline regarding Ego and Star-Lord, as far as how things go with Yondu, as far as how things go with this crew of Yondu and they're jettisoned into space, the way that they mistreat Baby Groot, like it's just a movie that just doesn't feel fun to me, and it should feel fun. There's aspects of fun, and then you get this really dark, grim stuff regarding Ego murdering all of his children, and it's just like, the transitions aren't working here, buddy. And not only that, the biggest disappointment that I had with this is the character of Ego and the way that they chose to present him. Because leading up to the release of this movie, when I found out that Kurt Russell was going to be playing Star-Lord's father, I kept thinking in my head how awesome that's going to be to see classic Kurt Russell banter with Chris Pratt banter. And that's not the version of the character that we get from Kurt Russell. We get a very serious type of character with some light banter. I was expecting like Tango and Cash level of Kurt Russell. So maybe that's my own expectations, but even beyond that, it's a fun enough movie. It's Guardians of the Galaxy, but just a lot of choices in it I did not like at all, so it still remains where it's at. Number 18 is the movie that I seem to get the most shit for in my rankings, and it's still staying here, and that's Doctor Strange. Now, this is a movie where I feel the Marvel formula from start to finish with this. This is the first movie where I started to feel that Marvel fatigue. When I went and saw it in theaters, it really does feel like the Doctor Strange character and storyline molded into the Iron Man formula that has been a proven success for them. And obviously it succeeds. I mean, a lot of people really love this movie. It was a financial success. People love the character. People can't wait for the sequel. And again, not a bad movie. It's just, it feels familiar to me. There's aspects of it that's cool. The special effects, the world building as far as like the magic realm version of the MCU is all really cool. Some good characters. But it just feels familiar to me. And it's the same criticism I had with Captain Marvel, which I'll repeat when I get to that. If you saw my full review of that, it's just these big, epic, out-of-this-world storylines and out-of-this-world characters shouldn't be feeling familiar by now. It should still feel fresh. But Doctor Strange, the first victim of the Marvel formula. Speaking of that, number 17, the newcomer, Captain Marvel. If you saw my full spoiler-free review, and if you haven't, you should. It's online right now. This is a movie that's good, but that's about it. I think that Nick Fury is the best part of the movie. It's got some really good moments of action and good moments of CGI, and it's got some really lackluster moments of action and lackluster moments of CGI. The age, de-ageification that they do on the characters is flawless. That is awesome. I think there's some good banter between Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson. I like the villains, the Skrulls, and what they do with those characters throughout the storyline. Brie Larson is just okay. The character of Captain Marvel, she's just okay. They don't feel like they really get to know, or we don't feel like we really get to know Captain Marvel in this movie, and it's her movie. So the Marvel formula gets in the way of that a little bit. Some of it's the way that they decided to kind of scatter the storyline throughout flashbacks and present day stuff. And they just don't really give enough for her to feel like this big triumph by the third act. It just kind of feels like, hey, this is who Captain Marvel is, so when she gets in Avengers Endgame, you're not confused. Good? You up to date? Okay, cool. Number 16 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, this is a movie where, honestly, I forgot most of it by now. I haven't rewatched it since the theaters. I remember enjoying it in theaters. I walked out and it didn't really feel like a formulaic MCU movie, but it just felt like kind of more the same from the first Ant-Man movie. Wasp was a great addition. I liked Michelle Pfeiffer for the little bit that she was in this. I liked where the post-credit scene kind of landed as far as the timeline of this movie. Paul Rudd's great in the character. I love Michael Douglas in the character of Hank Pym. The action sequences regarding the shrinking and the growing is all great, and we get to see Giant Man again in this one, so I had a lot of fun with it. It's just an enjoyable MCU movie that doesn't really try to be anything more than that, which, fair enough, they succeeded with that. But there's movies that try for much more ambition higher on this list that succeed with that, so that's why it's placed this low. Number 15, another controversial pick, even though it's 15, so it's almost halfway up the list, Spider-Man Homecoming. This has a lot to do with the fact that I am a fanatic of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. Yes, even Spider-Man 3, despite all of its flaws. I love that trilogy. I love Tobey Maguire. So when you get to this version of Spider-Man, I really liked him in Civil War. When you get to his standalone movie, Homecoming, a lot of the directions they decided to go really bugged me. The way that the high school characters are and the way they interact with him, I don't like any of them. The villain, Vulture, is the best part of this movie. Michael Keaton is awesome. The character is awesome. My buddy Sean Chandler has called it numerous times that he's basically the Walter White of this universe. And if you know me, you know how much of a Breaking Bad fanatic I am. That totally is up my alley. He's great. He brings this movie out almost an entire letter grade. Tom Holland's still great as Spider-Man. I'm not a huge fan of the storyline and how kind of small scale it is. I know that's what they're going for, going back to high school, but it just feels like a downgrade to me for some reason. And kind of shoving Spider-Man into the Marvel universe and having like the Tony Stark Iron Man Spider-Man suit really bugged me. Tony Stark, another really big positive for this movie. I like his little mentor relationship. We get to see another side of his character. And Robert Downey Jr. is just as great as he's always been. But the Iron Man suit that Spider-Man gets bugged me a lot too. Spider-Man is grand enough of a hero without needing technology. So just little tiny weird decisions they decided to make that worked for a lot of people that to me just kind of bugged me a bit. So really enjoyed this movie, but it's not on the level of the other Spider-Man movies that I've seen, except for the amazing ones. Those are still worse. Number 14 is the Avengers Age of Ultron. This is a movie that I think has a lot of the same magic as the Avengers, a lot of the same fun, a lot of the same group dynamic, the same style of humor, the same huge action set pieces, and it succeeds with pretty much all of that. But it is somewhat diminishing returns because it is the second time we've seen all these characters together. All the magic was in the first Avengers because there was so much like nail-biting tension. Is this movie finally going to be good or is it going to be a huge disappointment? And it was awesome. So you get to Avengers Age of Ultron, still really good. Doesn't quite have that magic, that anticipation. Ultron, to me, was a little bit of a misstep of a villain. In the trailers, they really let him to be like this really intimidating, presence, this really sinister villain, and he's totally jokey the entire movie. One of the moments, and there's moments in all these movies where the MCU humor, that was one thing I forgot to mention in Doctor Strange, really kind of gets in the way of the tone of the movie sometimes. But Ultron, just a decent enough villain. And the Black Widow-Hulk relationship thing didn't quite work for me, and they haven't really developed it since, so just small things, but I really enjoy the Avengers movies, and the Avengers Age of Ultron is no exception to that. Still like this one. Number 13 is Captain America, the First Avenger. I love the Captain America movies. You're gonna find that out for the rest of this list. I think it's one of the greatest movie trilogies of all time. He's my favorite hero in the MCU, and this first movie was great. This first movie really introduced you to who this character is, and this character is impossible not to be inspired by and not to look up to and not to be just enamored with because of his moral ground, because of just how strong of a person he is internally and then eventually externally. I really like how it kind of tied in with the World War II setting and the being kind of a period piece. I really like his relationship with Agent Carter a lot, and his relationship with Sebastian Stan's character of Bucky, and even just the rest of his buddies who were in the World War II. I really enjoyed this movie. It's more so when it gets more comic booky with like the Red Skull and how they kind of go more in the Marvel route and not so much a period piece hero movie towards the third act that kind of holds it back a little bit, but I still really enjoy it. So I mean, it's high up on this list. It's definitely my least favorite of the Captain America films, but I still love it to death. Number 12 is Ant-Man. This is a movie that I saw in theaters and I was like, okay, that was good enough. Upon rewatching it, I really enjoy Ant-Man. Ant-Man is a fun movie, just like Ant-Man and the Wasp. It doesn't try to be anything more than it is. It tries to be more small scale, more of a heist film. It's not trying to go for these huge Avengers style action sequences or world domination scopes or anything like that. It's more small scale, but it works because of Paul Rudd, because of Michael Douglas, because of the action sequences they craft around like the growing and everything like that, the shrinking. It's just a fun movie. Michael Pena is a lot of fun. It's a movie that I can pop on and enjoy no matter what mood that I'm in, and that makes it really high on this list because it's just a thoroughly enjoyable heist film within the MCU. Number 11, this is one that jumped way up on this list upon rewatch, The Incredible Hulk, the red-headed stepchild of this universe. This is the one film that more times than not is in the bottom rung of most people's rankings, and it was for mine for a long time too, just because it feels like the only movie in this universe that they kind of ignored. They kind of act like never happened. They don't really acknowledge it. Nothing really ties back to it until we got Thunderbolt Ross back in Civil War. It's a damn good movie. It's a really fun movie. It's very Hulk-centric. I wish that they had the rights to be able to make another movie like this, but they probably are always going to have to regulate Hulk to a side character, unfortunately. I really like Edward Norton as Bruce Banner. And I really like this version of the Hulk. A little bit leaner, a little bit more of a brawler, and not so much just like a big meathead that he is in the Avengers films. But I really do like, I think I prefer Edward Norton's Bruce Banner, even though I still like the way that they've utilized the Hulk of Mark Ruffalo's Hulk in the Avengers films. He has a lot more to do, a lot more fun. But this is a really good action movie. I like all the fight sequences, especially the third act with the Abomination. Really enjoy The Incredible Hulk, and it's a shame that they've kind of forgotten about this one because there's a lot of potential they could have used in this for a couple of sequels. Top 10, baby. Breaking into that is Black Panther. This was the one that made the huge storm last year, got nominated for Best Picture and all that crazy stuff. I don't think it was quite that good, but it is a good Marvel film. It is a good comic book film and a very important film, obviously, for reasons I don't even have to go into. It's kind of like Lion King to a degree, not even a negative, it's actually a positive, but this has a lot of world building, a lot of really cool world building. I like all of the characters in this. I mean, Black Panther's a badass character, and he's like the 4th or 5th most interesting character in this movie, so there you go. The villain is really good, although I wanted to know a little bit more about him. Killmonger's a great villain. Some CGI issues here and there, a little bit of familiarity with, again, the MCU formula and kind of following that Shakespearean Lion King kind of storyline, so you can kind of see the writing on the wall as far as where the plot is going, but thoroughly enjoyable film, very important. Bravo for Black Panther and for my boy Ryan Coogler. Gotta love Creed. Number 9, another movie that jumped up on the list upon rewatch, and that is the original Thor. This was the one movie when this universe was kicking off that I had the least amount of interest for. I was like, what the fuck is this? Thor? No thanks. Upon rewatch, I really love how this movie is very Shakespearean and very grounded within family themes and family troubles and about kind of rising to the throne, sibling rivalry, measuring up to your father's expectations, the father realizing the son can surpass him, all that great stuff. I love the family dynamics between Thor, Odin, and Loki. I love all three of the actors and their performances. I love everything in the first act with Thor just being an arrogant dickhead, like when he goes to confront the frost giants and they say something to him right when he's about to leave and he just kind of smiles and lets his hammer go. And Loki's like, oh shit, here we go. I love all that stuff. The weakness that brings it down from being in my top 5, because it's got the potential to be there, is the Earth shit, which is most of the movie. Not that it's bad, it's just, it's again the characters. Kat Dennings, whatever the dude's name is, who was the freaking killer and the girl with the dragon tattoo. What's her fucking face? God, I'm losing names now. Natalie Portman. I'm talking too much, guys. These rankings are rough. Natalie Portman, the chemistry just is not there with those characters. When you get to the Earth segment, you immediately want to go back to Asgard because it's just rocking when they're in Asgard. All the character interactions, all the chemistry is there. You get to Earth, you just want to see Chris Hemsworth because he's the only one that really feels like he's entertaining. And everything going through to the third act with the twists involving Loki and him having to break the Rainbow Bridge and everything, I love all the stakes of that and the dynamics of that. It's just a really great movie. So Thor is a movie that upon rewatch just jumped way up on this list, and it's a movie I see lower on a lot of people's lists that I think deserves to be higher. So there you go, that's why it's higher. Number 8, the one that started it all, baby, the original Iron Man. This movie created a universe. For all intents and purposes, it inspired a huge dynamic change and shift in what we view comic book movies as, and now it's the biggest franchise, the biggest genre in film. So that's all thanks to Iron Man. Iron Man is great. Robert Downey Jr. coming back and being kind of out of Hollywood jail, giving us this great character of Tony Stark, the awesome direction by Jon Favreau, the writing, the sharp humor, all the character interactions between him and Pepper and Rhodey, the action sequences, the character arc of Tony. There's so much that's great about this movie. Very little negative to say about it. The villain feels a little bit rushed towards the end, Obadiah Stane, but that's just a Marvel problem as villain. So that's why I didn't even harp on that throughout every single ranking, because there's like maybe 4 movies that have great villains. The rest of them is like, oh, villain issues, oh, villain issues. Iron Man, it's a fantastic movie, kicked off this universe. I just think that there's movies above it that have come after it that hit me a little bit better right here. So, number 8, Iron Man. Brew the controversy, Iron Man 3. That's right, I said it, Iron Man 3. Let me get this out of the way. I totally understand why hardcore comic fans, hardcore Iron Man readers hate this fucking movie because of the Mandarin thing. I get it. If I was a hardcore reader and they did that to, the Joker of the Iron Man universe, I'd probably be pissed off too. But coming from somebody that's never read an Iron Man comic, coming from somebody that didn't know shit about the Mandarin, and coming from somebody who loves Shane Black, except for the Predator, I really enjoyed Iron Man 3. I thought it was a huge step up from Iron Man 2, and obviously a little bit of a step up from Iron Man, which is why it's one step higher than that on this list. I love all the character interactions, especially with the kid in the second act. I think that the dynamic between Tony and Rhodey is the strongest in this movie. I think that all of the technology he uses with this new Iron Man suit upgrades that he has in every single movie is badass in this. Action sequences are great. I loved both of the villains, even though one of them was a tease and we got swapped out for the other one. I really like both of them. Everything about this movie I enjoy the hell out of, and it's a lot of it because of the Shane Black writing and the Shane Black directing. I thoroughly enjoy Iron Man 3. I don't get a lot of the hate for it. The Mandarin thing seems to be the biggest thing that swings people and makes it go down to the bottom of the list, but I think this is a fantastic Iron Man film. So there you go, Iron Man 3. Number 7. Number 6. Thor Ragnarok. This movie Ragnaroks. Okay, that wasn't so good. I can't do the puns like you, Sean, I'm sorry. Thor Ragnarok is the shit. This is the movie that is the best in the Thor trilogy by quite a big margin, even though I really enjoy that first movie. I like the dynamic between Hulk and Thor. I like the fact that it's kind of a buddy cop space adventure type thing. I like we go into the cosmos, getting a little bit weird. You get things like Jeff Goldblum. I love the gladiator fight. A lot of the supporting characters are hilarious and they stand out. The tone of this movie, the fun of it, the action sequences, the villain Hela is really good. This is a movie that I thoroughly enjoyed in theaters. When I got home, I loved it even more. So this would have been probably around 9 or 10 in theaters, and it shot up this much just upon rewatching it at home. This movie is awesome. Thor Ragnarok, you Ragnarok. Number 5 is Avengers Infinity War. I know a lot of people already jumped this up to number 1 and they've kept it there ever since last summer, but For all the amazing things that Infinity War does, bringing all of these characters together and still feeling like it's able to balance all of them, being able to tie up so many storylines, being able to deliver on 10 years of anticipation for these Infinity Stones, for Thanos. This is Thanos' movie, and Thanos was delivered in spades, not only performance-wise, but CGI-wise. He's just a fascinating character. He's a villain who is intimidating and scary and has a huge presence, but at the same time, he's one of those villains, which is the best type of villain, where you see where they're coming from. You can see what makes him tick, and you can understand what made him get there mentally. So that is just pure awesome. Great action sequences. The negatives for me, two big ones. One, Captain America takes kind of a backseat in this, and he's my favorite character. So the fact that he was kind of regulated to a few scenes and was kind of more of background upset me a little bit because I was really anticipating seeing him more, but apparently they're swapping that for Endgame, so hopefully that makes up for it. The other one is the ending. Not that it's a bad ending. I think the ending is good. It's definitely a good cliffhanger. It's a good way to leave off and leave anticipation for Endgame. But for me personally, just because of the way the world works now and the way that the MCU works, where they've announced the next like 2-3 years of movies, we already know Black Panther's coming back. We already know Spider-Man's coming back. We already know some other characters are coming back. That when people started to dust, I'm like, well, they're going to come back, obviously, because that guy's got a movie coming out next year. That guy's got a movie coming out in like 18 months. So the gravity wasn't quite there. Like, I didn't have that gut punch feeling that this movie really needed for that ending because I knew they were coming back. So there was no like, oh my God, that character's gone, holy shit. Some people did. I wish I could have had that response to it, but I just didn't. So that's what brings it down to number 5. Still an incredible movie though. Number 4 is Captain America Civil War. Talk about a movie that's able to balance ideologies perfectly. This is Captain America versus Iron Man, and as much as a Captain America fanatic that I am, and as much as I love Tony Stark, this movie does really make you struggle morally and mentally with what side am I on? Because you see Captain America's point, and you see where he has flaws in his thinking. You see Iron Man's point, and you see where he has flaws in his thinking. And the fact that the team just splits up, you're like, no, come back together, and you don't know what side you would be on. I'd probably be on Team Captain America. But you don't know what side you would be on because they're both like, I get it. I could be a referee for both, like, guys, I see your point. We got to come to a middle ground here. Aside from that, action sequences. Phenomenal. The airport sequence, one of the greatest sequences in this entire franchise, in the entire genre of comic book films. All the new characters. Black Panther, I think he's more badass in this than he is in his own movie. You get Spider-Man, he's more badass in this than he is in his own movie. All those like introductions to those characters, flawless. The way that they utilize Bucky as kind of like this cornerstone for this conflict, genius. The way that you have this villain Zemo that a lot of people bitch about and a lot of people hate. Despite the fact that he's not necessarily needed in this movie to make this movie work, you can make this movie work perfectly and take him out of it. I really like him as a villain for this universe. He's probably in my top 5 or 6 villains just because he's so against the grain for what you know a big comic book villain to be. He's just a dude making phone calls and pulling strings behind the scenes and kind of manipulating people like a mastermind. And that's it. He's not a physical threat. He's not like some superhuman guy or some, intellect trying to take over the world. He's just a guy out for revenge, and he gets his revenge. So Captain America Civil War is a phenomenal movie. A couple of flaws is just maybe some of the pacing here and there, some of the conveniences as far as where the characters end up in the 3rd act for certain details to be revealed just at the perfect time. Small nitpicky shit like that. Civil War is badass. That's why it's at the number that it is at number 4. Number 3, top 3, baby. Number 3 is the Avengers, the original Avengers. So much was riding on the success of this movie. Not only financially, but fan reception-wise, critical reception-wise. I remember all the anticipation. This felt like the biggest movie that ever was before it was released in theaters. And you go to see it, and this movie delivered in spades. Everything you could have possibly asked for this movie and more. It's almost flawless. The only negative that I have with this movie, honestly, is that I hate the look of Captain America because it's just a weird modern day suit. They fix it immediately in Winter Soldier, and they've not went back to it since. That's the only thing that bothers me. The way the helmet and everything looks just looks weird. Beyond that, action sequences, badass. The entire 3rd act, phenomenal. All the character interactions, awesome. You get Thor and Hulk. The comedy there is brilliant. You get Tony Stark just riffing on everybody, which is awesome. Captain America kind of coming into his leader role. Great. Black Widow and Hawkeye coming into a group that they have no business fighting alongside, but you still don't even care because they're such great characters. The Avengers is the shit. And it's probably Most people say Infinity War topped it. I have yet to see an Avengers movie top the first one, but we'll see. Endgame might actually do it. So here's to hoping, because if it's better than Avengers, that's a damn good movie. All right, guys, final two, process of elimination. You probably already know which ones are left. My number two is still Guardians of the Galaxy. This was the biggest surprise that this universe ever delivered upon me. I didn't know who the fuck the Guardians of the Galaxy was. None of us did, really. Didn't know what this movie was supposed to be. Didn't know how it was going to fit within this universe. I, like almost everybody else, said that is going to be their first flop. Here you go. Let's watch the fire burn. And then I went to the theater and I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. I still enjoy it. It is thoroughly enjoyable from start to end because of the characters alone. And you get all this other cool shit along with it too. This space cosmos world, this kind of opening up the Marvel Cinematic Universe to a new realm. The villain, Ronan, I think he's a really good villain. He looks cool, he's utilized well. But the characters, Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, Groot, they're phenomenal. They're weird as hell. They should never work. On paper, they sound like the worst idea ever, and they pull it off in spades. This is a movie that I can watch over and over and over again. It's not only one of my favorite comic book films of all time, but if you consider it like a space adventure, it's up there with like some of the Star Wars movies for me. It is that damn good. The humor, the soundtrack, one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. Seriously, ranked. That's enough gushing about it. Guardians of the Galaxy, still holding strong at number two. But number one, still holding that crown, and I doubt anybody's ever gonna take it away from it, and that is Captain America Winter Soldier. You've heard me say this before, unless you're brand new to my channel. This is an intro to me. Captain America Winter Soldier, not only my favorite MCU film, not only my favorite comic book film of all time, but one of my favorite action films of all time. Yes, for years of comic book movies, for a guy whose Batman is the biggest, best, baddest superhero ever for me, that is my guy, Batman. A Captain America movie is my favorite comic book movie of all time. Because from start to finish, this movie delivers so much that it needed to. It has this political spy 70s thriller aspect to it, which is awesome, gives it its own flavor. It has a lot of good tension and a lot of good utilizations to kind of mold the story and not feel templated like a lot of the movies that really aggravate me on this list. Captain America, even better as a character. His, moral conflict grows with trying to kind of keep his moral stance that he held on to strong for the first Avenger and what made him the person that they wanted to have this program with, struggling to keep that intact with this modern day war and this modern day military form and the way that S.H.I.E.L.D. is doing things. The whole drama about S.H.I.E.L.D. and kind of Hydra taking over from within or always being there, all that stuff is great. Winter Soldier, the interaction between those two characters, the reveals, the drama, the tension, the really huge stakes that it has as far as the character of Captain America and what he might have to do to his best friend that he thought has been dead for decades. The interaction between Nick Fury and Captain America is great stuff. Black Widow getting upgraded to like a sidekick. She's kick-ass in this. The interaction between those two is great because they have all the chemistry of like a romantic kind of relationship, but it never goes there. And you never feel like it should go there. And it never feels like if it did go there, it would feel forced. It's like that perfect synergy. All the action sequences in this movie, which is why I consider it one of my favorite action movies as well, flawless, phenomenal. Like over and over and over again, it's some of the best action you're ever gonna see time and time again. The elevator sequence, one of my favorite scenes of any movie ever. I could watch that on repeat. It could be like a wallpaper moving on my TV while I'm doing anything else in the house on a constant roll, and I would never get tired of it. Everything about this movie. I have no flaws, no nitpicks, nothing I could say negative about Captain America Winter Soldier. This was a movie that blew me away and never fails to amaze the hell out of me and entertain the hell out of me every time that I rewatch it. And it is my number one MCU film still to this day. Well, that's it, guys. I am out of breath and tired. When we get to like 40 of these movies, it's going to have to be like a 4-part episode or some shit. Slow down, Marvel. But that is the new ranking for my 21 MCU films now with the release of Captain Marvel. And you will see me again when Avengers Endgame comes out because that's kind of the end of an era. So that ranking might even be even more important than this one. But that's my ranking. What is your guys' ranking? And give me some reasons down below too. Don't just give me a list from 1 to 21. That's kind of boring to scroll through. So let's conversate down below about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the MCU. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. Check the video description below for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spreadshirt for Cody Leach t-shirts and other cool merchandise designed by the great Woody Bowen, and my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel and help this channel grow and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. So check all that out, guys, and if you want to check out some more of my videos like reviews of previous MCU films or even past rankings to see how my thoughts have changed over the years, you can check all that shit out by clicking right over here.